Hello and welcome to, I don't know what to call this, JetX Live, Nania Live, Cool Your Jets 0.5. I don't know. This was not scheduled. This is totally impromptu. I just woke up this morning. It's 9 a.m. right now on the East Coast. And I got out of bed and I realized there is 1 week until the Jets kick off against the 49ers in San Francisco. It's actually Santa Clara. They do not play in San Francisco. But nonetheless, this long offseason is almost over. No more rankings, no more quotables, no more predictions, none of that. It's almost real football. It's almost the real thing. And this is poised to be, I'm not even going to say one of the most exciting Jets seasons of our lifetimes, definitely mine, or at least my stretch as a fan, but easily the most exciting Jets season in potentially franchise history. It definitely has the potential to be that. So we're almost there. I'm so excited. We got 3 days until the NFL season kicks off. Baltimore and Kansas City on Thursday. Then on Friday, you have Philly and Green Bay in Brazil. So the NFL is loading us up with games now throughout the week. I kind of like that, to be honest with you. But I'm excited. So I had to get on here and talk about it. I'm looking forward to actually previewing this game a little bit because I think we've all talked about the preseason. We've talked about the 53-man roster. We all know what our expectations are for the season and what the model for success is. So I think for me, I wanted to get on here and talk about this game, Jets and 49ers, because that's my favorite part of doing Jets X Factor, doing any of this, is actually talking about the football part of it, the matchups, the 1v1s, the schematics of it, the philosophies, all of that. That's my favorite part of it. And now we get to do it. I did an article yesterday talking about the Jets D-line against the Niners O-line. I know Rivka already had an article up this morning about the Jets' three-pronged plan to upset San Francisco. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. What's up? Let's see who's in the chat. Christian, what's up? Week 1, let's go. That's right. Matthias, thank goodness it's over. I'm totally with you. I mean, I like talking football 365 days a year, but it does get tiring after a while. Oh, who had this quote about the Jets are going to suck this year, or there's turmoil in the locker room, or look at this ranking. They had Sauce as the 11th best corner. Like, who cares? That's all over. Can't wait. 12-5 season. I'm with you. I think 12-5 is where I'm at with my prediction right now. I don't think there's a limit on the ceiling, but you just need to get 14, 15 wins. You need to close every single close game. You need to blow out a lot of teams. A lot has to go your way, but I think 12-5 is where I'm going to settle right now. Run the ball, please. Yes, I think this is going to be a much more run-heavy team than I think people outside of the Jets circle think it's going to be. I think they want to take pressure off of Rodgers' shoulders. I think running the ball I think they could be one of the best running teams when you look at the talent on this offensive line. The way that they did a good job of getting guys whose blocking talents kind of mesh with one another. They started off with Moses and Simpson, gap blockers. Tyron Smith is a really good gap blocker as well. And based on preseason, it looks like they're going to do some more power running, gap blocking. So I think the scheme all works together. We've seen there are numbers that have been out there of Breece Hall being a better gap runner than zone runner. So it all meshes together really well. They complement it with the 2 running back selections. I think they're going to run the ball quite a bit this year and balance it to set up the pass so they could be explosive and efficient when they do throw the ball off of play action. Howdy, Todd. Nania doing solo podcast. That's right. I think this is the first time I've done this. So I don't know. Woke up this morning feeling different. It's sunny morning here in Charlotte, down here in North Carolina. So I don't know. 7 days to go. The Jets' expectations are high. I felt like let's just do this. Let's just do this. These are not the same old Jets. They're the just win Jets. That's right. I've been preaching that a lot this offseason. I think as Jets fans, we're trained to be pessimistic and plan for the worst. But I think this is the year to just embrace the expectations, embrace the high ceiling. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. What are you going to do? You're going to cry about it. I'm going to cry about it. And where are we going to be in a year from now? We're going to be right back here watching it again. So, just be optimistic right now while you still can. And throughout the season, as they build success, which I think we all anticipate, be pompous, brag about it to your friends, to your non-Jets fans on social media. Embrace this. It's something that we are not used to. So I would say just enjoy it until it can't be enjoyed anymore, So that's what the mentality that I'm taking. These running backs are also good out of the backfield. Yeah, I think Isaiah Davis especially in that first preseason game had a lot of good plays as a receiver, especially that one play out of the backfield, a little angle route or something over the middle where he beat a linebacker and then broke a couple tackles. I really like what he could do in the passing game. But Braylon Allen, too, has shown the ability to do that. And as a pass blocker, I think Braylon Allen showed a lot in that area. With his size, he's got the potential to be very good in that department. So that's going to be key because when you're playing running back with Aaron Rodgers, he's going to make checks. He's going to read the blitz pre-snap and make sure that he's in the right protection. So as a running back, you may have had a called pass route for you in the concept, but Aaron Rodgers is always going to be ready to potentially check you into a pass block. So you have to be able to do that as a running back on this team with this quarterback. And I think both of those guys are capable of doing it. So we'll see how they could do it. I expect big things from Breece. So do I. I think his fantasy stock is legitimate. I think he's going to be the top running back in the league this year. I really do. Like we just talked about, I think the Jets are going to run the ball a lot. He's also active in the passing game. So I expect huge things from him as well. I'm pumped as well. How's Ben doing? He's out there in Los Angeles working with the Chargers. He's doing great. He's enjoying it. I was talking to him recently, and he's having a good time with it. He's telling me how he just wants to keep his head down, continue to do the best he can over there. You got to have that mentality of, just because you made the team doesn't mean the journey stops there. You got to, then you got to be a good sixth man. Then you got to start. Then you got to be an all-star. You got to keep building it. So he's happy to be there, but he's got his Jim Harbaugh khakis on. He's embracing the hard-nosed mentality over there. He was not stuck in the elevator with those players in Dallas. I can report that. But he's doing good, and we still talk a lot. We play MLB The Show a lot. We're not very good, but we're improving. We made someone quit a couple days ago, so we're building on it. Going to Hilton Head Friday. Hilton Head is awesome. I went there last summer. I have an aunt and uncle who live down in that area, in South Carolina. Very nice spot. Agreed. Third and short is ours. Yeah, I think on third and short, with the power they've got in the backfield and just like the straight up grit that they've got on the offensive line with Simpson, Tippmann, Moses. There's just a lot of downhill power on that offensive line. I think the Jets have struggled in these third and shorts in recent years. It's not been as much of a gimme as it should be. And they've had so little confidence in their O-line that, we've seen Mike LaFleur go into 5 wide on 4th and 1 shotgun. So I think now it's going to be a lot more of an automatic play for them. Same thing for goal line. Breece, 2,000 total yards. I could see that. I definitely think it's within reach for him. I mean, he almost got 1,600 last year. And that's with, first couple games, he was easing into it. Dalvin Cook was taking some of the touches. He was coming off the ACL. And then throughout the season, there were some games where he had single-digit carries because the Jets were down so big so early that he had to, they were passing the ball the whole game. So I think this season we're going to see games where he gets 20 carries because the Jets go up early and they want to, milk the clock and control it. And he's going to be a lot more efficient with his yards per carry. I mean, he still was at 4.5 last year we know what that offensive line was like. So with the talent they have this year and with Aaron Rodgers lightening the box as well, I think he's going to make the most out of those carries as well. Too many weapons for – yeah, I mean, that is like the question because I think his receptions could go down because, last year he was getting a lot of checkdowns because of the lack of wide receiver talent. You had Garrett Wilson and then no one else was separating. So a lot of passes that may have gone to other wide receivers were going to him on just checkdowns. So I think maybe that's what's up in the air for me in terms of Breece's stats. How many receptions, how many targets is he going to get? With the increased weapons, with hopefully better pass protection, allowing you to attack downfield more. But Aaron Rodgers does like to pass to his running backs. He likes to use the flat, so I still think he'll be involved. But will he catch 76 passes? I think that's what remains to be seen. But I think his rushing, like 994 yards last year, I think he's going to push for 1,400 in somewhere in that ballpark this year, just because the more carries, the more efficient with those. So we'll see. MLB The Show is only playable sports game. Can't play Madden. It sucks. I haven't gotten Madden since 2021. I've jumped off the Madden train. I did get College Football 25. I think it's pretty good in terms of the gameplay. I haven't played a lot of it. I'm not a big college football person. I just don't really have any connections to it, so it doesn't resonate with me as much. But the show is really good. It's the first time I've actually had an MLB game since I think like when 2K was still doing it. It was MLB 2K11 or 2K12 on the Wii. That was the last time I had a baseball game. But the show is a solid game. How many blue chippers do the Jets have? I mean, let's pull up the roster. So what counts as a blue chip? Can Aaron Rodgers still be a blue chip because he's, a veteran, or do you have to be young to be a blue chipper? But I was watching NYJ Matt and NYJ Mike had an episode of their podcast recently, and they were tiering the roster. It was hilarious and great. Everyone should watch that. But and just the number of guys in that elite category, that elite tier, is astounding. I don't know if the Jets have had any player who would fit in that tier throughout the past, pre-2022. When was the last time they had an elite player on their team? I don't know. Jamal Adams was the only one for a couple years. Then before that, probably go back to 2015 when you had Marshall. I think Wilkerson was probably an elite player at his peak. So, yeah, just the fact that they have like 8 players right now who are all-pro caliber, either were all-pro last year or should be this year, is, it's pretty astounding. Depth at wide receiver bothers a little. Yeah, I think that's one of the main concerns. You're hoping that if they're totally healthy, then Mike Williams and Garrett Wilson is a duo that is, right there on par with any of the other great duos in the league, because there are a lot of them right now. Mike Williams, when he's healthy, you look at his last 17 games, he's been around 80 catches, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. So if that's your second best guy, you feel really good about that 1 to 2. But he does have durability concerns coming off the ACL at 30. So we'll see what you get from him. But yeah, beyond that, I do think it's shaky. I think they like what Gibson showed this offseason with his development, the fact that he's been more involved than we expected in terms of his camp reps and where he is on the depth chart. I think that's promising. But Malachi Corley, I think, has come along not slower than expected, but I think as we sort of anticipated, they're probably going to start him off in more of a gadget type role, design touches, while they work on the other aspects of his game. But I wouldn't rule out by midseason Corley coming into that third wide receiver spot and being more of a well-rounded weapon, because his potential in the non-gadget areas, I think, is higher than people realize. Blewett showed it throughout his film review of Corley, but the vertical routes and the contested catches were there, and the flashes of route running potential. It's just doing that more consistently. And even in the preseason, like, he didn't dominate or explode or anything, but he had little plays. Like, it could have been a 2-yard catch, but there were tough catches that he was making that, impressed you with his hands. Then there's the one play where, Kuntz dropped that pass and he just clutches it right above the ground. That was a display of just, playmaking ability and wherewithal and hands. So I still love his potential. Just we'll see if he could show enough in-season development to expand his role by mid-season. But then you have Lazard. I don't have the highest expectations for him, but this is still a guy who, in his first 3 years with Aaron Rodgers, when he was getting 40, 50 targets a season, when he wasn't a focal point, he was a solid, reliable target. I think those first 3 years with Green Bay, and I pulled up his numbers here, he averaged 13 yards a reception. He caught 68% of his targets, 14 touchdowns in those 3 years. So that's about 5 a season. He was averaging about 500 yards a year. I think that's what you're hoping to get from him. You don't ever want to see too much of him because he's just too drop prone and not good enough of a separator to be a high volume player. But if you get small doses of Lazard, I think he could be a solid vertical weapon. He could be useful in the red zone. He's a big body for slants over the middle. So hopefully he could, it doesn't excuse his lack of effort and quitting last year, but hopefully he's locked in mentally. And with Rodgers back, they could use that chemistry to make him, middle of the pack, third or fourth receiver. So hopefully he can do that. I don't think Dalvin is that wash. He definitely didn't get enough opportunities last year. Yeah, I think there's something to be said for running backs, some guys needing more touches to be more effective. I think even when they signed Cook, I was looking at his game logs, and he was most effective in the games where he got the most carries in terms of his efficiency. So he could be that type of player. And the Jets' offensive line was obviously a total joke last year anyway, which only Brees was able to overcome because he's, I think, one of the two best running backs in the league. So we'll see what he could do over there. I am not the highest on Dalvin Cook, but he could rejuvenate over there. If defenses play 8 in the box, Rodgers will pick them apart. This is another big factor of Rodgers being there. It's like, even regardless of what Aaron Rodgers even does, just the fact that he's standing back there changes the way that defenses are going to play this team. Like that first game if you look at the first play against the Cowboys when the Jets offense came out, it was, regular 1st and 10, beginning of the game. The box was stacked, and the Jets didn't even have like a heavy personnel look or anything, but there were 8 guys in there, and they ran right into it, and they went nowhere. That's not going to happen as much this year because you respect the fact as a defense that if I creep my safety down into the box, Aaron Rodgers is going to see that, and he's going to check right out of whatever play that he called, and he's going to take his 1v1 to Mike Williams or to Garrett Wilson. So you have to have reinforcements in the back end to counter that, and that is what's going to allow the Jets to have numbers in the run game and be able to be effective in that way. So I think they're going to try to work off of that, establish their run game, and then once they run it so well to the point that the defense has to go, okay, we just can't allow them to keep getting 7-8 yard chunks at will. We have to allocate more to the run game. Then at that point, Aaron Rodgers is going to take his shots. And I think that's what makes him so dangerous, regardless of the fact that he's 40, he's not as mobile as he used to be, whatever. Regardless of those things, just the mental ability to read and react to the defense and punish whatever weakness they're giving you, I think is going to make him so effective regardless. Apparently, Lazard has been impressing in practice. Yeah, it seemed like he was a lot more active this year than last year. He did have some big drops. There was one that the only one I went to was the joint practice in Carolina. He had a bad drop on a slant in the end zone that turned into an interception. I think based on reports, he did the same thing a couple practices later. So the drops are still there, but that has always been a part of his game, even in Green Bay. It's just, he was doing enough outside of the drops to still be a useful player, and he did not do that last year. So, yeah, he's going to drop some passes. That's what he does. But hopefully he could just give you those 4 or 5 touchdowns, a couple deep shots, just do enough to, play your role in the background, do your job, and block well. That's the thing, too. He has the frame to be a good blocker, and he showed flashes of it, but the effort was inconsistent. So just block well, make a couple big plays. That's all we need. Just a straight Nania stream. Okay, I see you. That's right. I said this earlier. I just woke up this morning. Feeling pumped, excited. We got a week to go until Jets football. They are the AFC East favorites, a division they have not won since I was 2 years old. So, yeah, I'm feeling excited. Eyeball emoji. It's one of my favorite emojis. Always gets people talking. Defense should be better if just the reason they will not be on the field as much. That was brutal for the defense. Yeah, I think there were a lot of games where the Jets started to let up points near the end, and it made it look like they struggled defensively. But if you're watching the game, you're like, okay, we're asking the defense to do way too much here. They've been holding their own, trying to do their best to keep you in it, and then their back breaks at the end. Like even that Lions game a couple years ago when they allowed that touchdown to who was that, Brock Wright or whatever random tight end that was who scored that winning touchdown. It's like, yeah, that's a bad blown coverage. You shouldn't do that. But also, can the offense stop punting the whole game so the defense can rest a little bit and maybe be locked in for the end of the game? That would help. But in addition to that, it's just being able to be in more favorable, obvious pass situations, because that's the strength of this defense is the pass rush, the coverage. The run defense is solid, but definitely the pass defense is more dominant. And they've barely been able to exercise that recently because of the lack of leads. Just teams have not been forced to pass. Like you look at last year, the Jets faced the fourth fewest pass attempts in the league and the third most rush attempts on defense. So that just doesn't play into what they do well. But with the Jets leading more often, hopefully they'll be in more obvious passing situations. And you can forget about Will McDonald's run defense, and he could just go out there and rush the quarterback. You can forget about, teams running up the middle on draw plays. And it's just, we're going to come after you, and you're going to have to throw against Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed and Michael Carter. So good luck doing that. That's complimentary football 101. And I think it's just a testament to how great this defense is that they've still stood out the past 2 years, despite the fact that they've been given the worst situations possible. So it's exciting to think about what they could do with even just average support from the other side, let alone if it's better than that, which it probably should be. Sauce is a blue chip for sure. Blue chip is a draft pedigree too, but most of all, it's performance in high stakes situations. Yes, I mean, I would say blue chips on the Jets, if we're going to include veterans too: Rodgers, Tyron Smith, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Sauce Gardner. Quincy Williams has earned that, All-Pro last year. Did I say Quinnen yet? Quinnen Williams is in there. Is Hassan Reddick a blue chip? He's like borderline blue chip. And I'm not being biased because he's not here. He's on the fence. I don't know if he's quite there. Maybe a couple seasons ago, when he had like 16 sacks, he was definitely there, but he dropped a little bit last year. I'm on the fence, but still great player. Hopefully he shows up. I'd say those are the blue chip players on the team. Hopefully I didn't completely whiff on someone. I think AVT can be one. Obviously, we just got to see him stay healthy. But in that event, I think he could make his case for it. It's going to suck when we got to pay everybody. At least one guy got to go. It sucks. Yeah. I mean, that's a consequence of being a good team. It's not something the Jets have had to deal with because they have not had good players on their team. So they've spent all their money on other teams' good players, oftentimes when they shouldn't have. Le'Veon Bell. And it hasn't gone the greatest. But, I mean, we're seeing like what the Niners are dealing with right now. Almost felt like they had to make their choice between Trent Williams and Brandon Ayuk. It's looking like Trent Williams won't play. Please don't play. I'm hoping he doesn't. That would be massive. But, it's just a consequence of being a good team. But I think the best organizations find their ways to work around it. They trade guys too early instead of too late. Get some compensation back before you lose that player. They extend guys early so they can get them, when their market value or before their market value skyrockets. That's something I think Joe Douglas can be better at. Like Michael Carter probably should have been signed already. I don't know why they're waiting on that. I think that's when you see where the good front offices are. I think Joe Douglas has shown that he could accumulate talent pretty well between the draft, especially I think under the radar pickups he's been great at. The coaching staff has developed talent well, but the challenge going forward is how do you maintain that? How do you choose between who you keep and who you lose? I mean, we've already seen some decisions there with Bryce Huff leaving. I think they'll be challenged going forward in terms of how you can manage the losses and the gains. Defense not being on the field is the best defense. Yeah, that's 100% true. You definitely want to control the possession. You can't score if you're not on the field, as they always say. Sauce needs to travel. We got beat all day by a few receivers last year. Yeah, he talked about it earlier this offseason about Ulbrich wanting him to do it more. I would like to see them be more open to doing that in certain situations because, if, say, DJ Reed is getting picked apart by a certain player on the other side, the Dolphins gave him trouble last year. I think you want to be open to that adjustment if you're struggling with something. But in general, I do like the way that their coverage works. Sauce left side, Reed right side. Because overall, I think their coverage philosophy is simplicity. Like the Jets very rarely have blown coverages the last 2 years. I think part of that is because they don't really mix and match too much in terms of moving players around, things like that. It's a very straightforward scheme that lets the players play and just it allows the talent to shine. The scheme doesn't get in the way. And I think that has really emphasized the talent that they have. So, yeah, I think the way that they play really helps them minimize blown coverages. It improves communication. So I think it's a big plus the way that they do it. But at the same time, I think it would be good to remain open to making that adjustment because Sauce has shown he could do it. We saw it in his first game against Mark Andrews. He mans up on him and makes the play downfield. And then, various other superstar receivers that he's played well against. He can win on an island against anybody, even if he hasn't gotten many chances to do that in this scheme. So, yeah, I think I would like to see them be more open to doing that in certain situations, especially with this schedule that is going to have a lot of star wide receivers on it starting in this first game. So, yeah, I think they should remain more open to it, but I also think that the way that they do it has been effective and that they shouldn't stray too far from it. Sauce, Brees, Garrett, Rodgers, Quinnen, definitely blue chippers. Second ranked Quincy, CJ, underrated key cogs, Carter. Yeah, I think Mosley was a blue chip maybe a few years ago. Right now, still a great player. I think I'm just going to take him down like one notch from blue chip. If he can catch some of his interceptions, maybe he can get back up there even at this age. I know he talked about wanting to improve that this offseason, but I think he dropped 4 interceptions last year. He's there. I think he's still a good coverage linebacker because even if he's not the greatest athlete, I think his fundamentals and his brain allow him to be really good in coverage. He knows the right spot to be in zone coverage. He erases routes over the middle. He is able to track down passes over his head and get his hands on them. Just hasn't had the great hands in terms of catching the interceptions. But, I mean, if he can have like a 5 intercept, like if he caught all of those ones he dropped last year and then 5 interceptions, maybe we are talking about him as a blue chip and still a first-team All-Pro at 31, 32 years old. So, but he's still a great player for sure. Rodgers, Sauce, Wilson, Brees, Lazard only plays well with Rodgers. That's all we've seen so far. So it's the only quarterback he has played well with. But he is with Aaron Rodgers right now. So hopefully that continues. Quincy will be a blue chipper after the season. I would put him there right now because he was an All-Pro and he's still, 28 years old. He's not super young, but he's in his prime. But first-team All-Pro, most pass deflections among linebackers. He the most stops as well. Just looking at his speed and the angles he takes and how strongly he can finish some of those tackles and what he could do in coverage, like breaking up that wheel route or there's some vertical play to one of the running backs on the Bills in that season opening game last year. Like he's one of those few linebackers who has that ranginess in coverage and going from sideline to sideline. So I would say he's a blue chip right now, but if you want to wait and see another year, I do understand that. Dakota or the Jets motivators here. Second All-Pro incoming. Let's freaking go Jets. Key to this offense is run the ball, spread the ball around. In the pass game, move Wilson around, and Corley, I think, can be good in his rookie season. Yeah, we talked about it earlier. I still think there's an opportunity for Corley's role to expand. It does seem like going into week 1, he's probably 5th on the wide receiver depth chart, but he'll probably get more touches than Lazard, maybe even Gibson too, just based on the couple of design plays they give him. I also think if he's one of those starting 2 kick returners, which we're not entirely sure who that's going to be yet. I think Gibson seems likely, but who's next to him? Is it Davis? Is it Corley? I don't think we are totally sure on that yet, but I think Corley will be a good kick returner as well if he gets that opportunity. But yeah, I think his role will expand as the season goes on. Need Corley to take that Lazard spot. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a much higher ceiling. I think he gives you much better yak ability than Lazard. I think his hands can be a lot better. than Lazard. There are a lot of areas where Corley can be more effective than Lazard in the same role. So hopefully he can do that. Rodgers knows how to use Lazard. He does. Yeah. I mean, he had 8 touchdowns a couple years ago in 2022 or 21, Rodgers' most recent MVP season. He had 8 touchdowns on only 40 catches. So yeah, Rodgers does know how to get the most out of them. And that's something Rodgers does with big-bodied receivers. He's really good at the placement on those back shoulder balls to where, he puts it in a spot that's like just towards the extent of their reach, and that allows them to have a chance to win those contested balls. So that's something, Zach Wilson was not great at. Doesn't excuse some of the easy drops that he had, but I'm looking forward to see what Lazard does this year, the full season of Rodgers. I think he could be a decent player this year. Jets are going to surprise a lot of teams. Are we concerned about Corley? Not yet. I mean, I think to this point, it's about what you expected. I mean, he was a 3rd-round pick and I think the 12th wide receiver off the board. So, this isn't a blue chip. Speaking of blue chip prospects, I don't think we're talking about one here. This is definitely someone I think you should expect there to be a little bit of development from. So I'm not too concerned just yet. For starters, I just would like to see him, whatever opportunities he gets, whether that's special teams, end arounds, screenplays, make the most of those, make your impact in this with the skills that are supposed to be his strength. And then from there, work on the route running, the separation, whatever it is that they think he needs to improve. And hopefully by midseason, we're seeing more of him. But I'm not too concerned yet. It's just I think there's a little bit more of a spotlight on it because the Jets, their drop-off pass receiver 2, I think, is bigger than most teams. The 1-2 punch, I think, can be up there with anybody. But then, I think there are probably some teams that go deeper 1 to 3 than the Jets do. Like you look at what Houston has. And a few other teams across the league can probably go 1 to 3 better than the Jets can when you go from Mike Williams to, I guess, Gibson right now is your 3rd receiver. So because of that, I think there's more of a spotlight on Corley because we want to see someone round out that top 3. But I think in terms of, he was a 3rd-round pick. He's not a guy who should be expected to immediately be great. So I'm still willing to give him time. I'm not overly concerned yet. The chemistry makes Lazard 100 times better. Garrett Wilson in the slot is going to kill it this year. Yeah, I think the fact that you have Mike Williams now gives you some more flexibility to put Wilson in different looks. And he did play in the slot quite a bit last year, but because you didn't have any outside threats, it was on him to get every fade ball, every 9 ball. It was all him because no one else was going to do that on the team. And Garrett Wilson can do that, but I think that's not the main strength of his game at this point. Right now, what he does at his absolute best is win the short to intermediate routes. If it's a quick slant, if it's a whip route, if it's an out, if it's a dig, things like that, you just can't cover him right now. The vertical game, I think he still has the potential to be great at that, but contested catches are something he can improve. So I think what he does best right now is win short to intermediate and make plays after the catch. So now that you have a guy who you can trust outside the numbers with Mike Williams, you could get Garrett Wilson more looks in the slot and just force feed that man the ball and just don't stop. And I think Rodgers is going to do that. So looking forward to different looks for Garrett Wilson. Do I own the YouTuber or not, Michael Nania? Can't confirm or deny. No, I don't. Is that a thing? Yo, Mikey. Michael Carter, important piece of the defense. Like him. Yeah, and also it's good to see that he was healthy. It was getting a little bit concerning there for a little bit with his injury sort of lurking. But yeah, we heard recently from Saleh that he's okay. He's good to go. That's massive. And I think in this Niners game, like that's something that can be an advantage for this team is the coverage of the corners against the wide receivers. The fact that Ayuk is playing is huge, but after him, they really do lack receivers who could beat man coverage. It's something that is a weakness in Debo's game. I think he had like 5 or 6 catches against man coverage last year. It's not what he does. So, yeah, outside of Ayuk, the Jets have a chance to really clamp down and win these 1v1s in coverage against their wide receivers, which could allow them to roll coverage over the top towards Brandon Ayuk and try to limit options for Purdy. So great that Carter is going to play in this game. Nania low-key good at handling streams by himself. Normally used to see him in more of a co-host role. That's what I'm used to seeing myself in. I'm not used to doing this. I think this is the first time I've done it. I used to do like a solo podcast at Gangrene Nation when I think I was 17 or 18. It was the 2018 season. That I think is like the only experience I have doing things solo. But like I said, just woke up feeling different this morning. 9:35 a.m. here on the East Coast. How many hours until 8:20 p.m. Eastern on September 9th? Let's get the exact number here. Google's not helping me. Oh, never mind. 1 week until the Jets 49ers game. So the energy is high. I was like, we got to come on here and talk about it. It's really settling in now. I feel like the preseason went by really quickly. Training camp was a little long. The offseason before that was very long to me. I don't know if everyone else agrees with that, but this was not one of those off seasons where I was like, oh, that went by really fast. No, it was 8 months since the Jets last played a game, and it felt like it. Maybe it's because we've been waiting for Aaron Rodgers to play a game for the Jets for what is now 18 months. 18 months. Maybe it's because of that. As like we were waiting 2 straight off seasons because last season basically didn't happen. I think a lot of it is because the Jets just have a great roster and there was less to be dramatic about. Like we were spending a week and Joe Tippmann's snaps were the biggest story about this team, which thankfully seems like that resolved itself. Hopefully that is not an issue that pops back up. But yeah, I feel like this was a really long off season. So now that we're a week away, it's set in this morning and I said, we got to get on here. Talk about Jets Niners. I want more solo Nania pods also. We'll see. This has been pretty good. This team is balanced. All 3 phases. We got to include special teams in that. T-Money Morstead, Greg the Leg. Although he struggled. He missed a couple kicks in that last game. We'll see what happens going forward. I don't care. Two misses in a preseason game. There was no drama. They're at the practices. Greg the Leg is all good. All 3 phases, they got it. 7 days away. That's right. Let's do this. All caps, 3 emojis. That's the type of energy we want around here. Need to have better first quarters and don't give up third and long plays. Yeah, the Jets, they haven't come out strong in games really since Adam Gase was here. I mean, not Gase for everything you want, but that man could cook up an opening game script like nobody else. Yeah, I would like to see some. And that's where I think Hackett, speaking of Hackett, I think this particular point is something that I think falls perhaps more squarely on Hackett than anything else is how do you open the game? Because, coaches talk about it a lot, how those first 10 to 15 plays or so, couple drives that you script very much falls on your pregame planning. Then after that, it's a lot of adjusting. So what's Hackett going to cook up for this elite Niners defense to start off? How is he going to block Nick Bosa? How is he going to get passes behind Fred Warner? What's he got cooked for the start of the season in the first quarter? So, yeah, I think throughout the duration of games, Rodgers is going to do a lot to try to overcome Hackett or whatever deficiencies he may have. But it's at the start of games where I think we're really going to get an idea of what Hackett's role is, what he is planning, and how he's going to affect their success. So, yeah, I think that's a fair point to say that they got to come out stronger. And third and long plays, I think one thing that they struggled with on third downs is quarterback scrambles. And part of that is just a natural, byproduct of playing man coverage on third down. You blitz, you turn your back to the quarterback. Sometimes he's going to scramble and you just live with that. But I think in general, they've been solid on third down, but it comes down to their pass rush. Your third down specialist, Bryce Huff, isn't here anymore. Can Will McDonald step up and fill that role? Is Hassan Reddick going to show up to this team and bring you that closing late in games and on third down? And I think speaking of quarterback scrambles, that's something Hassan Reddick can really help with, because his speed and agility and finishing in open space, because he's a great pass rusher, but the reason he gets so many sacks is not because he's, Von Miller or Myles Garrett with the consistency or finesse. It's because he's an amazing chase down guy. When he finds his target in space, he closes the ground and he finishes the play. That's how he gets so many sacks, is because he's just so good in space at finishing, tracking down the quarterback and getting him down. So the quarterback scrambles an issue for the Jets. I think Hassan Reddick can really help you with that. So hopefully he shows up at some point. Our coverage will lead to sacks as well. Yeah, it works both ways. I think the Jets have gotten a lot of coverage sacks that have been created by really good coverage from the corners. Can't wait to watch a Hall of Fame quarterback suit up for the Jets. Yeah, we've been anticipating this for, like I said, 18 months at this point, really, since it became, basically a given that he would be a Jet last March. It's all going to hit us like a ton of bricks. When that fifth play comes, like, you're gonna be like, all right, 1 snap, 2, 3, 4, like, please just survive this play. And that fifth snap is going to come up, and then you're going to start settling in like, oh, this is what we've been waiting for. And like, this is what it feels like to have an actual quarterback, a guy who doesn't throw an interception every other drive, a guy who throws the ball away when he's 10 yards behind the line getting chased by Nick Bosa instead of spinning backwards and getting sacked, a guy who could check out of a run and into an easy, 2-yard slant on 3rd and 5 when the corner is playing 10 yards off, a guy who in the red zone just keeps offense moving forward and doesn't take intentional grounding. Just a guy who does normal quarterback stuff. And then on top of that, he's Aaron Rodgers, and he could also throw a 50-yard bomb at 40 years old and drop it in the bucket. So it's all going to hit us at once. We're almost there. Blue chip to me is someone you would build your team around, like foundational. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good definition. I guess, maybe that would exclude the older players, but I guess if they're great enough, you could still have them as a short-term core player. We're going to have to deal with the quarterback position sooner than later. Start now. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how much I think Rodgers gives you another year after, unless they win the Super Bowl, in which case it's like, okay, you won the Super Bowl, so we'll worry about the rest later. But if they don't, I do think he'll be back for another season. So I think in that event, if he gives you one more season, I think, next year you could prioritize getting a higher value developmental quarterback, because I think Travis is, there's major injury concerns with him. He was only a 5th round pick. So I don't, he's intriguing, but, franchise quarterback potential, I don't know about that. So, if Rodgers does return for another year, maybe next year you use a higher draft pick on a developmental guy. Have to pay Garrett and Sauce. Yeah, I think next offseason it will get done with those two guys. And they're going to be big numbers, especially with Garrett Wilson doing it after the season he's likely about to have. And Sauce is going to break the mold at corner. Whatever that current record is going down with him, that's for sure. Take on the Reddick situation. It's been talked about ad nauseum by everyone at this point, but I mean, for me, it's hard to project because it doesn't feel like there's a logical reason for it to still be going on. Reddick has lost a lot of money already. It, seems like if he wants to get the contract that he thinks he's worth, he's got to play and prove that value, because not only do the Jets clearly not think he's worth what he's seeking, but, when he's available in trade, any other team could have traded for him and given him that contract. And nobody did. And he ended up with a Jets team that does not want to pay him long-term. So clearly his demands are beyond what the league thinks he's worth, not just the Jets, which is why his trade request, I think, doesn't really move the needle in terms of leverage, because it's like, okay, no one else traded for you in March, so why would they do it now while you're being a holdout and a distraction? So it doesn't seem logical that he's taken it this far. So logic would tell you that he would show up either tomorrow or Wednesday ahead of the beginning of the practice week and end this, show up, have a great season, prove you're worth your contract and go get it next year or midseason, if that happens. But that would be logical, but there's no logical reason he should still be holding out. So I would think that he shows up one of the next 2 days because that just makes sense. I just don't see what he gains from not only losing money in the present, but missing on the opportunity to build up his value to what he thinks it should be by playing games. But, it doesn't seem like there's been a lot of logic from their side so far. So maybe he does skip games. It's just hard to tell what the motivation and goal is from their side right now. So I still predict he'll show up either tomorrow or Wednesday because that just makes the most sense for him. But I also thought it would have ended weeks ago. So we'll see. Keep our draft stock and trade down. I don't want to see. Yeah, I mean, there are some situations where it's probably just best to stick with, what you're doing. There aren't a lot of guys who can man up against Tyreek, especially. So I think against the Dolphins, you just want to play softer and try to keep them in front of you as best you can. Those Dolphins games will be interesting because the Dolphins are the one offense that really did give the Jets defense trouble last year. I mean, Tua completed almost 80% of his passes in those 2 games. They really did not have an answer outside of Brandon Echols. I mean, maybe that's the play. Just bench Reed and play Echols in those 2 games. I think that's the strategy. But the thing is, I talked about this in an article I put up a couple days ago looking at the Jets division games. The Jets shouldn't have to shut teams down to win anymore. Obviously, we expect them to do that a lot this year because it's a talented defense, but the days of having to win 13-10 should be over. They could do that sometimes. They're capable of it, but they have the offense to where the defense should be allowed to have a bad game or they give up 30 points and you still win the game. That's key to win in the NFL today. You have to be able, as much as the Jets can win 9-6, they also have to be able to win 40-37 if the situation calls for it. And I think those 2 Dolphins games are an opportunity to show that because it's a great offense. They have a lot of speed. It's hard to stop them. Not many teams can until December, which, luckily the Jets do face them at home in week 18. So by then, maybe they'll be cooled off like they usually are in the cold weather games. So that's good. But yeah, it's a great offense. And maybe the Jets can't stop them. Maybe it's just not a good matchup. But that doesn't mean you can't go out against their defense, which isn't great, and ranked 22nd in scoring last year and lost Christian Wilkins and dropped 35 points on them. So I want to see the Jets show the ability to win shootout games this year when the situation calls for it, if they're going against a fellow great offense. Be able to re-sign Wilson if Rodgers leaves. Our lack of offense has hurt him. I mean, it's all about money. I don't think he'll hesitate to stay if the money is there. So I think the Jets will show him the dollar signs for sure. Found some of the best. Yeah, I mean, Joe Douglas's lows have been low. You have to give criticism where it's due for the Zach Wilson miss. I mean, that's your 2nd overall pick, franchise quarterback who's benched by his 3rd season. And as much as we love Rodgers, I think ideally it would have been preferable if Zach Wilson was a great quarterback and you had your homegrown team-controlled guy. You didn't have to give up a pick for Rodgers. And, you have your guy for the next 10, 15 years like the Bills do with Josh Allen, Bengals with Burrow, Dolphins with Tua. That would have been preferable if they hit that pick. He did a nice job landing on his feet with Rodgers. It was a unique opportunity that presented itself. Hopefully that amounts to something. Obviously it hasn't yet, but it has the great potential to. But yeah, I mean, between that, Becton was a major whiff. They really needed to solidify that. Speaking of Wilson, part of the reason he failed, I mean, he mainly failed because he's not good, but it also contributed that the offensive line and the supporting cast was terrible. And part of that is because in 2020, you picked Mekhi Becton and Denzel Mims back-to-back to start the draft. And that went the way it did. So he's had his share of whiffs, and most guys who win 2, 4, 7 games to start out don't get this far. But there have been unique circumstances with the injuries, with the quarterback play and all that have allowed him to get to this point. And now you sit here and the Jets are going into a season as division favorites despite everything over the past 4 years. So, he's had some really bad mistakes, really bad, but he has them in a good position here. And we'll see if they could finally translate that to wins, which is what you're supposed to do. And if they can't, there's a conversation to be had. But if they can capitalize on the roster that he's built, then I think you can easily overlook some of the past mistakes. I don't factor age into blue chip players. Yes, and I think Rodgers and Tyron Smith. How about Tyron Smith, a guy who's got to be talked about more, I think, in the grand scheme of this team? Because, obviously offensive linemen aren't superstars in the same sense as fantasy players like Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. Even defensive players get a chance to register more highlights. But the Jets have Tyron Smith. This is the best pass blocking left tackle of the past decade. And he's blocking for Aaron Rodgers. Like, you could even see it in some of those joint practice clips where Rodgers is throwing touchdowns. Like, that's what the focus is on. Like, oh, look at Rodgers hitting Breece Hall for this touchdown. But what my eyes are looking at is look at Tyron Smith locking up Brian Burns 8 yards away from Rodgers, nowhere close to affecting what he's doing. Look at Tyron Smith blocking Kayvon Thibodeau at the line of scrimmage while Aaron Rodgers is 10 yards behind him. That's what I'm fixating on. And that's something that pass blocking isn't something that, even compared to run blocking, it's not that flashy. Like, everyone loves a good pancake block that makes the rounds on social media. I post those. I posted one for Brendan Bates. So I love my pancake blocks in the run game. But pass blocking doesn't stand out like that because it's preventative. Like, you're not really providing the force. You're just absorbing it and holding the guy, preventing the guy across from you from doing anything special. What you're doing doesn't really pop out. But you look at any explosive passing play in the NFL, I guarantee you there's at least one great pass protection rep on there where you look at it and you're like, if he didn't make that block, if he got beat there, this classic passing bomb that people are replaying on the highlight reel, it never happens without that pass blocking rep. And you have a guy like Tyron Smith on the blind side of Aaron Rodgers. There's going to be a lot of deep passing plays this year that only happen because you have number 77 on that left side. So I'm very excited to see this man block for the New York Jets this year and provide mentorship for a first-round pick behind him. It's just an awesome setup. Will our fictitious grandchildren be talking about an iteration of Quinnen Williams D-line, or will they still be talking Klecko as the Jets' best? I like this comment because, like, all due respect to the sack exchange is awesome, but, like, I think the point is, like, that was a long time ago, and I think we need a new era of iconic Jets units to talk about. So the sack exchange is getting their 30 for 30. That should be awesome. I look forward to watching that. But let's establish a new legendary unit so our grandchildren can talk about, like, Quinnen Williams and all these other guys and Jermaine Johnson in the same way that we currently talk about the sack exchange, and hopefully with a championship ring to put alongside that. Do you think we could sustain success next year, or is it all in on this year? It's a good question. I think in a lot of ways it's an all-in team. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is on a year-to-year basis. He's 40 years old. You don't know when he's going to hit that wall, which I don't think will be this year, but you never know. Tyron Smith, 1-year deal. Mike Williams, 1-year deal. A lot of young guys poised to get paid, and you're going to have to pick and choose between them. And some of them you're going to have to lose those guys. So in a lot of ways, it's fixated on this year, but I don't think it's all in. I think that terminology is the misconception because this team has a lot of young talent. You've Sauce Gardner, you've Quinnen Williams, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, Michael Carter, Jermaine Johnson, Will McDonald, Olu Fashanu, Joe Tittman, Elijah Vera Tucker, and that I'd probably miss some guys in there. So there's a lot of young talent on the team that will maybe one or two of those guys have to leave because you can't afford everybody? Maybe. But they have core superstar talent that is 25 and under or mid 20s. And they're still going to be poised to compete. It's just comes down to quarterback. Who's quarterback after Aaron Rodgers? I think that is what will determine whether they can be successful throughout this decade. But they have the core, surrounding the quarterback to do it. So I think, yeah, in some ways it's all in the sense that this is probably the best shot they're going to have. But I also don't think that means they're going to be out of the picture after this year because they have so much young talent to still build around throughout the rest of the decade. It just comes down to how they follow up Rodgers. That's what their longevity will depend on. Oh, Corey Davis. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a traitor now. He worked out with the Bills practice squad, right? So do we want him? He retired, and then he went and worked out with the Bills. I don't know. And they also didn't sign him, so maybe he's a team that does not have great wide receiver depth. He worked out with them, and they didn't sign him. So I don't know. Maybe he doesn't have – and I like Corey Davis. I definitely was higher on him than I think a lot of other people while he was a Jet, and I did want them to bring him back this season. But I don't know. Maybe the Corey Davis ship has sailed. But I would have liked another veteran guy just to raise the floor a little bit beyond Mike Williams because there's a lot of upside. Like Lazard has upside, but in terms of, he could be a lot better than he was last year. Gibson is upside being a second-year player. Corley is upside as a rookie. But where's the high floor after Mike Williams, a guy who has injury issues? Who's that guy you could count on and know that he could be decent? You don't really have it. So I think that is the main concern with the wide receiver unit after Garrett Wilson is a lack of floor, like reliability. There's a lot of upside. If things break right, it could be really good if Corley develops how you want. If Lazard is 2019 to 21 Lazard, if Mike Williams stays healthy, all those things break right, there's a lot of upside. But who's there to catch you if you fall, if some of those things don't work? They don't really have that. So I think that is the concern with the wide receiver unit. Rumblings with Corey Davis to the Bills. Yeah, he worked out with them in early August, but didn't sign. ESPN season sim as Jets going 12-5 and making it to the AFC Championship. What do you guys think of that season result? Is that something you would be happy with? I know it's kind of hard to answer that now because you need the context of how it all plays out. Like, were they playing at home against a 9-win Colts team that made a Cinderella run to the championship and we lost to them? Or did they lose to a 17-0 Chiefs team in Arrowhead? So context matters in determining how that would feel. But in a vacuum right now, I think I'd sign up for that. I mean, we haven't seen a playoff appearance, let alone win, since January 2011, which will be 14 years by the time these playoffs begin. So I'd sign up for that. It would be a very fun year. 12 regular season wins, probably 2 playoff wins. I don't think that would be a 1-seed team with 12 wins in the AFC. So that's a lot of fun. That'd be great. But, it depends on the context. So, like, how much of an opportunity did they have in that AFC Championship to finish it off with a Super Bowl? Because like we said a few questions ago, I think they're not all in the sense that it's over after this year. But I do think this is the best shot that they're going to have in the foreseeable future. So it's a very big opportunity for them. And it would depend on how that opportunity looked once they got to the AFC Championship. But in a vacuum, I think I would be very happy with 12-5 in AFC Championship. Bills wide receivers aren't good. Kincaid about to have a monster year. Yeah, I drafted Kincaid in one of my leagues recently. But I'm curious to see where this Bills team ends up. Like, I have to give them respect because they're the 4-time defending champs. They've, the culture there has been good since Sean McDermott came in. They've been consistent. They've been good defensively. They blow teams out consistently. So it's hard to count them out until they're out. But Stephon Diggs was just such a huge part of what they did. And they trade him and they don't really replace him. And they're starting. Look at their depth chart right now. I mean, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Mac Hollins, Keon Coleman, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Like, I don't know, man. Like, the Bills' explosive passing game with Diggs that's their bread and butter. Where's that coming from now? And, Shakir showed some flashes. Keon Coleman has potential, but I don't know. That has me suspect of what the Bills are going to be. And then defensively, Matt Milano had his injury. Some of their, long-term mainstays at safety aged out with Poyer, Micah Hyde no longer there. I mean, Damar Hamlin is listed as one of their starting safeties right now, and he generally hasn't been very good when he's played. I don't know. Are the Bills as great as they have been in recent years? Again, until it's proven that they're not, I'll respect them as a threat to win the AFC East and go deep in the playoffs. But there's some concerns there. I'm honestly more concerned with Miami, especially from a Jets perspective. They have not matched up as well with the Dolphins as they have with the Bills. They still have probably the best offensive playmaker in the league, and Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, a quarterback who's perfect for that system. I think between those two teams, I'm probably more afraid of Miami, but we'll see. You got to respect both teams as legitimate threats, and the Jets have to prove that they deserve to even be in the conversation with them before we really start to write those teams off. But pure talent-wise, I do think the Jets are ahead of both of those teams. Would like to see something impactful come from Saleh's coaching, like reducing penalties and quicker adjustments. Yeah, I think Saleh is a guy who has an opportunity to benefit this year. I think the main thing that Saleh has done well in his tenure is develop defensive talent, and he's done it at a tremendous level. Like, you have to give him all the credit for that. He comes in, the 2020 defense was abysmal, and then first year that he was here, it was still terrible. I think it was the worst defense in the league that year, and that was mainly because he invested in young talent and didn't really work to improve it in 2021, but they got younger and they tried to establish what they wanted to do. And it only took them 1 year past that to become one of the best defenses in 2022. So they've taken waiver guys and developed them well. They've taken late draft picks and developed them well. Their high draft picks have lived up to potential. So the defensive talent development under Saleh has been fantastic. And I think you got to give him credit for establishing that. I feel like he's done a pretty good job with the culture and just kind of like reducing drama and just like you watch any video of the players and behind the scenes stuff, and it really seems like there's positive energy there, like a lot of good guys and good vibes. So I think he gets credit for that. But yeah, like what's he going to add? What does he add to your team in the way that Mike McDaniel does, Sean McVay, like some of these elite, Kyle Shanahan, who you're facing this week, guys who you play them and you know that because of that coach's scheming, and obviously those are offensive coaches I mentioned, but there are coaches, even like Dan Campbell with the Lions, the way that they are so aggressive on fourth down and, just the overall mentality that like, we're going to beat you up. Like, when you play the Lions, what you're going to get. And I think you can get that with the Jets too. They haven't had the offensive talent to do that in the way that the Lions do. But yeah, like what is Saleh going to bring on game days that makes you afraid as an opposing team? Like, oh, we're facing Robert Saleh this week. What's he going to do to us? In the same way that, going into this game, the fact that you are facing Kyle Shanahan makes you as afraid as any player that they have because of the way that he could scheme things up for them. So yeah, better adjustments in game, getting the penalties down, showing up in big games, like elimination games. They've been brutal under Saleh. We talked about Hackett with opening game scripts. Like, if Saleh's more involved in that, help Hackett make a better opening game script. Let's come out on the opening drive in San Francisco and put up a touchdown and like have the perfect screenplays dialed up to exploit them. You were their defensive coordinator. It was a while ago, but they're playing pretty much the same scheme. You have Javon Kinlaw, who was there last year. Scheme something up to score an opening drive if Saleh's going to be more involved in the offensive game planning. So, yeah, I would like to see Saleh show some improvement in adding value on game day. I think fourth down, he can be better too. Be more aggressive. you got this great offensive line in Breece Hall. You can get a 4th and 1 on your own 40-yard line. Go do that. That's what I love about the Lions so much. And I know that people are going to clown Dan Campbell for his 4th down decisions in the NFC Championship because they didn't work. But I don't think they would have been in that game if Dan Campbell wasn't so aggressive with the 4th downs throughout the entire season. How many games did they win? I think the previous game that they won to get there was a key 4th down decision that helped them win. So, yeah, I love the way they do that. I think, and, Detroit has a great offensive line. That's a big reason they could be so aggressive on 4th down. The Jets have that too. Go be aggressive on 4th down. Show the other defense that they have to stop you for 4 straight plays, not 3. I would love to see the Jets establish that under Saleh. So that's a big way I think he could improve what he's bringing to the team. Be a 4-down offense with the offensive line, the quarterback, and the running back you have. So, yeah, I'm interested to see what Saleh does this year. Notice that badge. Yes, that's right. Get a JetX YouTube membership. We have exclusive member videos. You can see all of Joe Blewett's full film breakdowns. His past, I think 2 full film breakdowns, the Giants and Panthers games, are up on there. So if you haven't been, Blewett's clips are always up there. There'll be like a 10-minute snippet. Like there was the Tack McKinley one, Braden McGregor, and Leonard Taylor. But he's breaking down every game in full, every single key takeaway, positive and negative, from every game. He's got like dozens and dozens of plays in there. So if you love film breakdown, film talk, if you love Joe Blewett, because who doesn't love Joe Blewett, then JetX YouTube membership will unlock those full film breakdowns for you. And it helps you stand out in the chat as well. You get icons, things like that. So plenty of perks. So get that green badge next to your name. They're so dumb for paying Ayuk over Trent. Yeah, I think the age is a big part of it because, Ayuk obviously is a lot younger. So maybe that's an aspect of it. But like from Jets' perspective, if you had to choose which guy do you not want to suit up in this game, I think it's Trent, because you look at his impact. They're 3-6 when he hasn't played since they got him. This is the San Francisco 49ers, a team that has made the last 3 NFC championships and had the lead in the Super Bowl last year. 3-6 when he doesn't play. And Brock Purdy had the 2 games he didn't play last year, they're 0-2, 17 points a game. McCaffrey under 4 yards per carry. Purdy 2 interceptions in each game. So that's just with Trent Williams out. That's how big of an impact he has. And the rest of that offensive line is not very good. It's not atrocious, but none of those other 4 guys are above average. But just because he's out there, this offense can be, one of the best in the league, if not the best. So if he doesn't play, that is absolutely massive. And for them to act like he's, expendable to them or something they could potentially live without, is a little arrogant on their part. Because he is special as not even just as far as offensive lineman goes. He's one of the most impactful players in the entire league. So if he doesn't play, that'll be massive for the Jets. Connor is in here. I was on Connor's show yesterday. Check that out. He always does an amazing job. He had Kenny Albert on recently, one of my favorite commentators. He calls Knicks games on MSG. He's great with the NFL. He called that classic Jets-Falcons game last year. Who could forget that? 13-8. Trevor Siemian comes in for Tim Boyle. I mean, what a timeless classic that was. I'm going to tell my grandchildren about that game. But yeah, Connor had Kenny Albert on. That was a great interview. He's always killing it over there. Rodgers is going to have so much fun this year with his weapons. He will be back again for more next year. Yeah, if he wins the Super Bowl, I feel like, for me personally, I would ride off into the sunset the way that Peyton Manning did. You can't top that, going out on a Super Bowl win, proving your doubters wrong. Just go out on that. So I feel like he would do that, but who knows? Maybe he would be like, why not go for another one? I'm Aaron Rodgers. I shouldn't have 2 rings. I should have 3. And I shouldn't have 3 rings. I should have 4. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Jets Niners. Let's go beat them next week. Today should have been game day. Yeah, what do you guys think of Monday night games? Do you like the Monday night games? in prime time in general, are you more of like a 1 o'clock Sunday guy or I don't know how those West Coast people do it. 10 a.m. is the start of your Sunday game day because as an East Coaster, I'm used to 1 o'clock to 11. That's your football Sunday. You start at 1 in the afternoon, 4 o'clock. You have your dinner like halftime, those 4 o'clock games. Then after that, you got the night game. Like Sunday night football should be Sunday night football to me. The fact that on the West Coast, the Super Bowl's at 3 o'clock, Sunday night football's at 5, that's just weird to me. But yeah, are you more of a Sunday, like 1 o'clock sunshine at MetLife, let's go beat the freaking Jaguars type guy? Or are you Monday night, Jets, Bills, Joe Buck, whole country watching type fan? What's your vibe? I like both. I don't have much of a preference. It's just win. GGN used to be my jam during the Rex era. Those were the days. Yes. John B, Smack Dad. Oh, those are all legends. Yeah, I mean, I wrote a Gangrene. That's where I got my start in 2017. I think I started writing articles over there. Before that, I was just commenting, writing fan posts. My name was Gangrene in Yonkers. Shout out to my hometown, Yonkers, New York. Yeah, Gangrene Nation is the OG. It's where I got my start. Always will respect those guys. Still go on John B's show sometimes. He's killing it over there as usual. One of the OGs in Jets coverage. So shout out Gangrene Nation. How many total interceptions do you think the Jets are going to have this season? That's a good question because I feel like they haven't gotten as many as they're capable of getting. But despite that, they've still been pretty good. Like they had 17 last year. That was tied for 8th in the league. In terms of their percentage of passes they intercepted, they were actually higher, 3.3% interception rate. That was 4th in the league. So, they weren't as high as they could have been because teams weren't passing against them. They faced the 4th fewest pass attempts in the league last year. So I think you expect that to go up this year because they'll be leading more. And teams will have to keep up with them more. So they'll face more passes, more interception opportunities. And I think they'll get more interceptable passes because you'll get more fourth quarter opportunities when teams are, playing more aggressive and recklessly because they have to. And that just has not happened in recent years with this team. Very few situations where teams are desperately playing catch up against the Jets. So already at 17 last year, all these circumstances, I think they can get 20 this year, 20, 21. The league leading number last year, for perspective, was 22. The Bears and 49ers tied for that. I'm surprised to see the Bears up there. I did not realize they had so many. But I could see them getting around 20 this year. A lot of it comes down to just catching them for the Jets. Like Sauce Gardner has not a lot. Like, let's not act like he's dropped 20 interceptions, but he's had a couple that he could have gotten that he didn't, especially that one in Dallas. CJ Mosley's dropped a few. So I think they could be better at securing their interception opportunities. But, yeah, I do see an increase in interceptions. What's a leash with Hackett to start the season? Does Saleh demonstrate urgency or let Aaron completely run the offense if things don't start out as planned? It will be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. What type of moves do they make with the management, the offense, if things aren't working out? I don't know. It's a tough one to kind of project because at the end of the day, he is the offensive coordinator. And, I know Saleh wants to be more involved, but he's not an offensive guy at the end of the day. So it is, I don't know. It would be interesting to see it. Like, does maybe Todd Downing get more involved, being the kind of the second in command as the pass game coordinator? I would think maybe that is the move if things go off the rails. Like maybe they're like, okay, Todd Downing will assist in play calling or at worst take it over. Hopefully it doesn't get to that though, but because I think Rodgers I think they have a good enough working relationship to make this effective. Even if Hackett isn't an offensive genius, which he's not. He's had enough years as an offensive coordinator without being successful to prove us that, he's not Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay. But can he run a successful offense with Aaron Rodgers? He did it in Green Bay. And granted, Matt LaFleur was basically above him in command. So how much of a role did he really have? We don't know. Well, we do know it wasn't as much power as he has now. But I think it can work. It seems like if Rodgers didn't believe in him, he wouldn't be here. So at the very least, you have that to hang on to. So I don't think there'll be I think Rodgers would go to bat for him and probably insist that he continues to call the plays or have the role that he has. So I think it's going to work out. But like we said, I think those beginning game scripts are where we're really going to get a chance to judge Hackett the most. And then halftime adjustments. I think those are the 2 points of the game where you could judge Hackett the most. The first 2 drives coming out of the game, and then the first drive or 2 out of halftime. How do you script for the game? What changes do you make at halftime? That's where Hackett's impact is going to be made. Beyond that, I trust Rodgers to make the calls at the line that needs to be made based on the trends that he recognizes at the line of scrimmage. But how do you script for the game? How do you adjust at halftime is what I'll be watching. How badly do we regret not keeping Seibert over Zuerlein? Yeah, I mean, Zuerlein is, what is he, like 36 now? Yeah, he's 36. He missed 2 field goals in the preseason finale. Seibert, a young, spry 27, made 100% of his field goals last year, 1 for 1, and extra points, 1 for 1 on those, which is better than Greg Zuerlein, who was only 92%. What a bomb. So, yeah, I mean, I think that was a huge whiff. They should have kept Seibert for sure. I mean, yeah, Adam Gase has a career as an opening drive specialist. I don't know why anyone hasn't hired him for that yet. Like, seriously, just have this man come in, script your opening drive. That's his only job. As soon as that's over, like, get him a hot dog, get him some nachos, and let him go sit in the front row or up in the club suite or something. I don't know. I think that's a job that he could do successfully. Give this man a job. The season is about to start when Nania goes live. Let's fucking go, Jets. Yeah, I mean, it's an unprecedented sight to see me doing a live show. I got my black Quinnen Williams jersey, looking good, from China. You didn't hear that from me. What's crazy? This opener is so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. All I care about is health. If they come out healthy, weeks 2 to 10 are against all winnable teams. Yes, this is a very key comment. Everyone should keep this in mind. This is 1 game out of 17. But for 6 days after this game is played, it will make up the entirety of the Jets season. They might have the worst run defense in the league for 6 days. Aaron Rodgers might have a 65 passer rating. Garrett Wilson might have 40 yards. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's 1 game. It means just as much as the game against the Rams in December as the game against the Steelers in October. So keep that. And this is the hardest game on the schedule. The hardest game. I mean, we'll see how the season plays out. Maybe San Francisco blows this year. Maybe the Titans will be the best team in the league. We don't know. But most likely, on the road against the San Francisco 49ers is going to be the most difficult game on this schedule. And that's the game we're getting to start first. So just remember that. Like, whatever problems show up in this game, whether they win or lose, are probably not going to be as problematic against other teams. If the Jets can't stop the run against the Niners, it doesn't mean they can't stop Tony Pollard next week. If they struggle to pass protect against Nick Bosa, it doesn't mean they can't go out there and block whoever the Patriots employ in this pass rush after trading Matt Judon. So just remember that. It's 1 game. If they lose, hopefully if they lose, it's a good fight. That's all I want to see. Just show that you're on the same level as them. Even if you lose a close game-winning field goal, tipped interception, whatever. If they lose, I would just like to see a good fight. But they can win this game. They absolutely can. But just remember, it's 1 game. It's probably the hardest game on their schedule. So, and then as you mentioned this comment, like after this game, look at what you have these next few games. Titans, Will Levis, Patriots, Jacoby Brissett, no Matt Judon. no wide receivers on the roster. Bo Nix and the Broncos at home, neutral site against Sam Darnold. Even if you lose this game, the expectation is that you're 4-1 going into the Monday night rematch with Buffalo in week 6. So yeah, just don't overreact to this game. It's important to keep that in mind. It's Nania. But people say what they want. They'll say Nania. Blewett still says it. I think Sabo does. So say whatever you want. I'm not going to come out here and correct you. But I have always said my own last name is Nania with a long A. Zerline will be fine. Yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. $1 million a season plus $500K bonus per opening drive touchdown. Incentive-laden contract for Adam Gase. How about no base salary? He just gets it. Or how about $500K per opening drive field goal, $1 million for touchdown? All right, that does it. $300K for a field goal, $1 million for a touchdown. Base salary is he gets to eat lunch at the team facility and dinner. Excited, but really all about the health against and health too. That's another part of that comment. Just like not that that's something that you should think about, like because it's just luck. Like try to just enjoy the game as much as possible. But yeah, it's about how you finish the season. You know, are you healthy going into the playoffs? Because you could win 17 games, but if in the last game everyone gets hurt, what are you going to do in the playoffs? So yeah, if as long as they're healthy for the stretch run, I think, you feel good about their chances of making a deep run in the playoffs because I think they can win road games in the playoffs. When Aaron Rodgers won the Super Bowl, the Packers were a wild card. They didn't play any home games in that Super Bowl run in 2010, which is, what the Jets were attempting to do. Very nearly ran into him in that Super Bowl. But his lone Super Bowl, 3 road wins and then the Super Bowl. And then this Jets team, they can run the ball. They have an offensive line. They have a quarterback who played in Green Bay for all those years. They could go win in Cincinnati, in Kansas City, in Buffalo, and Baltimore. So, yeah, just as long as they're healthy going into those playoffs, like you would love to win 13 games, get the 1 seed, win the division, whatever. But just stay the course, build chemistry, figure out your identity, stay healthy, get into the dance. And as long as you got this roster intact, like they could go toe-to-toe with anyone. Won't be kicking many field goals this year. Won't need to worry about Greg. We're scoring touchdowns. Interesting Greg Zuerlein stat that always stands out to me. You know how many extra points this man attempted last year? 16. He kicked 16 extra points last year. That is absurd. The man played 16 games and kicked 16 extra points. Once per game, you're kicking an extra point. What even is that? 2 years earlier, he's with the Cowboys. He kicked 48 extra points. That's what we're trying to get him to. Just make your extra points, Greg. I want Greg kicking 48 extra points again this year. 16 extra points. That's wild. Reddick's solid, and they'll need him for a playoff run. Not too concerned about him not being available week 1. I think it would help a lot if he played. I think putting pressure on Brock Purdy is the recipe to beating him, as it is with any quarterback. That's such a groundbreaking point. But yeah, in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs were harassing him like crazy. And you look at this offensive line, even if Trent Williams plays, the other 4 spots are very exploitable. I think especially at right tackle, Colton McKivitz gave up, I believe, the 8th most pressures among tackles last year. And Reddick played against him in that Niners game. And he had a sack against him. And he had 4 total pressures when he lined up on that side across from McKivitz. So that's a very good matchup if they can get it. So it would help a lot if he plays. They're not automatically going to lose if he doesn't play, but I think it would help a lot. But yeah, it would just be up to Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald to really take advantage of those matchups. And I'm curious to see where does Takk McKinley fit into all this? He made his way onto the roster. Are they going to give him an opportunity. How much of an opportunity is he going to get in these games? Is he even going to be active? I think he is, especially if Reddick isn't, because you need to replace that juice in terms of explosiveness in the pass rushing game. But how much is he going to play? Can he even be close to as effective as he looked in the preseason? If he's an average edge rusher, that's a major win. Average. That's all I'm asking from him. That would be – I'm actually asking nothing. It's just the fact that he's on the roster is more than I expected. But if he could be like average, that'd be a huge win. I'm curious to see where he fits in. This is related. If you were coaching the Jets, would you rotate Will McDonald and Tack and make Michael Clemens a game day inactive? I would. I would, but I know they're not going to do that. Just like I get what Clemens' role is, and I understand that now that they've traded JFM, he really is the only edge defender they have in that mold, like a huge defensive end who could set the edge in the run game. But it's a passing league. Like there's no such thing as a running situation in the NFL today. Like even if it's 3rd and 1, even if it's goal line, like at best it's maybe 40-60 in favor of the run game. Like there's always a threat that teams are going to pass. So even if you only put him on the field 1st down, goal line, short yardage, whatever, he's still going to have to pass rush almost half the time. Last year, he played the highest percentage of snaps against the run of any qualified edge defender, and he still pass rushed on 43% of his snaps, so almost half. So you can't hide him from the passing game, and he is a 0 in the passing game. 0. Like he played the whole season last year, a routine role, and he had half a sack and 1 quarterback hit. And he played 368 defensive snaps with almost half of those against the pass. So I just don't want a guy who half the time when the other team passes is just a statue out there. So I would make him inactive. Maybe he improves a little bit, taking off some of the weight that he gained last year. Because rookie year, he was still not great, but not quite as awful. He had 2.5 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, and actually fewer defensive snaps than he played last year. So he's capable of being less of a 0 than he was last year. Maybe he will be with the weight taken off. But I just I'm all about pass rushing. And like Tack McKinley showed you, he can stop the run, especially like athletically. Like Mike Clemens can set the edge. He could bull rush a tight end, but he's not going to chase down a play from the backside or get out in front of a jet sweep. But Tack McKinley showed you he can do that. So especially against a wide zone team like the Niners, I think McKinley is maybe even at least an equal run game matchup against the Niners run game. So I would do that, but I don't expect it. Clemens is going to play, so let's hope they can get the most that they can out of him, with him probably being lighter than he was last year. Dominate in all 3 phases. Do it on special teams too, like we talked about. I don't expect Morstead to be punting as much this year, but when he does, pin him inside the 10. And we talked about Greg Zuerlein. Make your extra points. Return game, I think the Jets can be really good in return coverage. They did a good job of that in the preseason for the most part. They have a lot of speed on the back end of their roster. Brant Boyer has been great at making them consistently good in the kick coverage area. So that too, like even if you don't make a big kick return play, don't let the other team get one. So all 3 phases. Week 1 doesn't matter. Don't overhype it. Win would be great, but all about health. My starvation to see a quarterback suit up for us under center dates back to when Mike White went down. So we'll be pushing 650 days. Pretty much. Because Mike White gave you that little stretch of competency, I would say, in that late 2022 run. Then Zach Wilson comes back in. I remember being so disappointed when I found out Mike White wasn't playing against Detroit. And, of course, they lost. Zach Wilson had bad interceptions in that game, missed open throws on the game-winning drive. And pretty much ever since then, we've been waiting to have a quarterback that you believe in, because Yeah, Mike White dominated the Bears, like almost led that comeback against the Vikings, made some big time throws. Uh, Ever since then, you haven't had a quarterback that you could trust, other than when Rodgers handed off to Brees for 20 yards on that first play against the Bills. Speaking of that play, how loud was that MetLife crowd when Brees Hall had that handoff at the beginning of the Bills game? I mean, like, I was at that game, and I've never heard a Jets game that loud in person or on TV, but especially on the TV broadcast, like, it was loud in there. It was really loud. So I'm looking forward to hearing the noise at MetLife this year. Is this a legitimate Super Bowl roster heading into 2024? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I think it's that simple. Like, they have holes in this roster, but I think something people should realize is that you don't have to be perfect to win a Super Bowl. Every team you look at the Chiefs wide receivers last year, or look at when the Patriots won in 2018. Like, their offense wasn't even that great that year. They just happened to be a dominant defense. Or look at when the Broncos won in 2015. That offense was bad. It was a bad offense. Peyton Manning couldn't throw the ball 10 yards anymore, but they had a dominant defense. The idea that every hole on your roster needs to be filled to win a Super Bowl is far-fetched. You just got to have enough. This is my formula for a Super Bowl team. There are four main aspects of the game: pass offense, pass defense, rushing offense, rush defense. Those are the four main facets. Elite in two, at least okay in one, or at least good in one. I'll say that. If you have two major strengths, can tread water in one other, I think you can go win a Super Bowl. And so I look at this Jets team. I think they have an elite pass defense. They can have an elite run game. The passing game should be at least good. To me, that is the formula to win a Super Bowl. The idea that you have to be dominant at everything is not realistic. So you just got to have a couple of elite strengths to rely upon and be healthy and get hot by the time the playoffs come. So I think the Jets are capable of that. Everyone's going to tune in. That's what I love about this season. Like, if the Jets are good, it's gonna be delicious. You know that? Like, all the tears that you're gonna taste from everyone who wants to see this team fail. And like, it's weird how the Jets are this kind of villainous team. Like, the Lions were good last year. People expected them to be good, but it's like they're rooting for them. It's like, go Lions. Their fans been waiting so long for this. And granted, like, I'll give my respect to the Lions fans. They've suffered even more than we have. Last year was their first home playoff game since the 90s. Their first playoff win since 1991. So that's rough. That's more rough than us. But they had like this lovable losers thing going on. But the Jets, it's like no one wants to see them win. People are already sick of this team. So, but why? Just because Aaron Rodgers? There's a lot of talent on this team. There's a lot of great, likable players. Why do people hate Sauce so much? He's so humble and down to earth and just plays great football and is amazing with the fans. But he's disliked for some reason. So it's weird, but it just makes it all the sweeter when they win. So everyone will be tuning in. Better pay Garrett and Sauce. Fair to say, no. I definitely, it's starting to trend that way. I think he could still show up. I mean, because it's a Monday night game, these teams don't start practicing till Thursday. So maybe, but the fact that they went with Ayuk, it almost felt like they had to choose, and they went with him. I think I saw a report from ESPN. I think it was Jeremy Fowler yesterday, who said that he's fed up and does not look like he's close to showing up. So it's not looking great, but I don't want to jinx it. Hopefully he doesn't show up, though. Don't think Reddick he could do that. He could. I mean, maybe that's what him and his camp is going for, is like, hey, don't show up. Let them see how they look without, or have them go out there and see, like, oh, we need Reddick. Like, maybe that's what they're holding out for. But, with the way that a preseason doesn't matter. But if they can go out in these first couple games, play well defensively, Will McDonald plays well, Jermaine Johnson plays great, then I don't think they'll be particularly desperate for him. But, maybe that is what he's holding on for the games to increase their desperation. Yeah, I mean, he could have done a hold-in. That's the thing that, that's what Ayuk was doing. I don't understand why Reddick didn't do that. Save your fine money. Just at least be present, So it's a little weird that he handled it the way that he did. And I get that he probably didn't want to get injured on a non-guaranteed contract. But, yeah, just hold in instead of hold out. No Trent, no Hassan Reddick. I think Trent Williams matters a little bit more than Hassan Reddick, but yeah, it's a loss for the Jets. Like I don't think fans should turn on him because you're holding out, you never played for us, like you're arrogant, we don't care about you. Like he's a great player. He's gonna make the Jets a lot better if he shows up, and it's a loss as long as he's not there. But we'll see how it plays out. Hopefully he shows up sooner rather than later. But in the case of this game, Trent Williams being out means a lot more than Hassan Reddick, for sure. Better beat the Pats by 40 in week 3. I agree. Don't just get the sweep. Embarrass these people. Embarrass these Dunkin' Donuts, clam chowder eating, tanking team. I'm sick of them. Like 54-13 in 2021. How many times did they come into MetLife against the Jets' young quarterback and just end his career immediately and implant demons into his brain that were never exercised to this day? I wish Drake May were playing. Obviously he still could end up playing by that game. Not that I'm going to wish for it, but it would be nice if he were to play and the Jets could return the favor by, giving him scars that last the rest of his career and win 50-3, pick him off 5 times. That would be fun. Purdy's going to die. He's going to die. He could. Well, he is at some point. But metaphorically speaking, against the Jets defensive line, against that Trentless offensive line, he will be at a great health risk. If we have Reddick and they don't have Trent, we're going to – oh, yeah. If Reddick plays, it's a wrap. It's a wrap. Without him, I'm less assured. But even without him, you still have Quinton Williams against Aaron Banks, Jermaine Johnson against their backup, Jalen Moore. Javon Kinlaw will be going up against a rookie, against a scheme that he knows. So there are still great matchups for them to exploit without him. Garrett always makes it known that he's faster in a straight line. Faster in a straight line than Brees. Who you got in a 40? Combine only had Garrett Wilson by literal hair. I think I would say Garrett, because I think a 40 is more fit for him. Like Brees is to me like a long strider. Like obviously he's had how many? 50-yard touchdown against the Giants, 72 against the Broncos, 81 against the Broncos. I think those are the plays where his speed really stands out. And he can go 50, 60, 70 yards. Like he really keeps that speed when he gets up there. Outside of that, first play against the Bills last year when he ran out of gas, but that was his first real football game in almost a year. Outside of that, like when he really gets going down the field, I feel like that's where his speed really stands out. His ability to hold that speed down the line. But I think 40 yards and like exploding out of the stance and the way 40 works, give me Garrett, but Brees still just is so explosive. It's close, but I think I'll go with Garrett in a regular 40. But like in-game breakaway speed, I say Brees, if that makes sense. Hey, Mitch, super chat, $10. Thank you so much. Great house. Michael, as always, thoughts on trick packages, like bringing in Sauce as a wide receiver decoy or Quinton Williams as a fullback, knowing you're going to throw a slant to Garrett near the end zone. More toys for A-Rod. I mean, throw back to Sheldon Richardson days when he had, I think that was 2014, when he had 2 rushing, or 20, no, it was 2013. It was his rookie year. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. Man, I don't know if you want to risk Quinnen Williams as a fullback. I don't know, or Sauce as a decoy wide receiver. I think based on Sauce's hands at the cornerback position, I don't know if he would be a huge threat as a wide receiver. So I don't know. I don't know if I see any of that. Maybe they'll do like some of the, speaking of the Lions that we talked about earlier, comparing to Dan Campbell, maybe they'll pull the offensive line pass out of their playbook, get Olu in there. He's pretty athletic. I feel like he could catch a pass. I mean, remember when Zach Wilson threw a touchdown to Connor McDermott? Mike White caught a pass on the 2-point conversion. Aaron Rodgers is not catching a pass this year. Go ahead and hit the under on 0.5 receptions for Aaron Rodgers, whatever the odds are on that. But the trickiest thing I could see them doing is maybe like an offensive line catch. Like put Olu in, have him be tackle eligible. Although just make sure you report to the ref and all that, like we saw at the Cowboys game last year. That was the Lions got screwed on that. So maybe I can see him doing that. I don't think Sauce is playing wide receiver. Live in Los Angeles, be at the game on Monday. Dope. Use Q like the Bears use the refrigerator. That would be cool. I mean, who would he be good at it? I'm just trying to think. Like, would Quinnen actually? Just because a guy is big, like it's going to take him longer to get to the line of scrimmage, and he also doesn't have like fleet of foot the way a running back would. I don't know. I feel like didn't they draft Braylon Allen to do this? I would rather just give it to him than a defensive tackle. Although Quinnen has showed good hands in his career. He had an interception last year. He had more interceptions than Sauce. Tyron Smith and Morgan Moses, along with AVT, are what will determine how far this team will go. Yeah, this offensive line it can be really good. It can be one of the best in the league with the talent that they have from left to right. I mean, John Simpson gets slept on. I love his game. What he showed on film, I think he could be a surprise player for this team. AVT is capable of being a star guard if he's healthy. But yeah, Moses and Tyron Smith is a great veteran tackle duo. Just you're hoping you can get as many games from them as you can. How do you see the Jets attacking San Fran's defense? Heavy dose of Brees and Braylon against that front. Attack their secondary. Something else. Well, Rivka had a great article this morning talking about the ideal plan to beat the 49ers. And like she said, mentioned in this article, I think one thing you want to do against this type of offense is keep the ball out of their hands and minimize the number of possessions they have. And how do you do that? You run the ball and you control the clock. I think you don't want to give the Niners a chance to put up 35, 40 points. You want to minimize possessions, make this a shorter game so it could be close in the end, and Aaron Rodgers can do what Aaron Rodgers does when there's a close game. Don't give them a chance to run away with it. Hang in there and protect the ball too, because a stat that she brought up in this article was San Francisco lost the turnover battle last year. Very rare. Did not happen a lot. Only 3 times, but they are 0-3. And when they won or tied, even tied the turnover battle, 14-2. So you got to win that turnover battle, and I think running the ball is a great way to do that. Controlling the clock, keeping it close. And then if you keep the game close, you don't let them pull away, you minimize their possessions, they might be more likely to pass the ball and take chances because they haven't gotten into a big lead. Then you can get some takeaways on their side, especially if this is a game where Trent Williams doesn't play. So I do think it's going to be a run-centric game plan. Also, their run defense, not nearly as good as their pass defense. They were 15th in rush defense DVOA last year. Their pass defense obviously was elite, one of the best in the league. So that's very similar to the Jets and their makeup defensively. So I do think it's going to be a heavy running game plan, and then play action shots off of that in longer distances, third down, even third and short. I think you'll see a lot of maybe even sequences where they run 3 times in a row to move the chains. then come up to a 3rd and short, play action shot out of that. I really think that's going to be their formula in this particular game. Should say, thank you. Thank you. If we win it all, Rodgers retires or he's no longer special, would you consider Dak moving forward? I like Dak. I mean, it's hard to argue with the production that he's had. I mean, he's been a major producer for them for a long time now. And you know how it is with the Cowboys. Like they don't win in the playoffs. So, being the quarterback of that team and that media spotlight leads to a lot of criticism. But he's been a very consistent, solid quarterback. I would be okay with him. I mean, I don't know what the contract situation is or how they would get him or trade for him or anything like that. But, he's only 31. So he's 36 touchdowns, 9 picks last year. I'd sign up for that. Heard Scene was scared to face Brees in our running game every day in practice, so he turned around to sign with the Bills. Yeah, he was a Jets legend. We're going to miss him in New York. There are not a lot of Jets jerseys up in those MetLife rafters, but there's definitely going to be a spot for Scene. I think that's for sure. The man never missed a tackle, never blew a coverage, never committed a penalty. I mean, he is a model of what it means to be a New York Jet, and we're going to miss him. So we're definitely going to have to put his jersey up there in the rafters. I mean, what a legend. What a legend. I mean, what else can you say? So let me pull this up here. There we go. Thank you, Lewis Scene. What a legend. I haven't even been alive. Yeah, when Connor brought this up on the Rich Eisen show, that was mind blowing to me because I mean, Connor is one of the best hosts out there in Jets land. He's so professional. Like sometimes you forget that he's 13, and then you find out that since the day he entered this earth, the Jets have not participated in a playoff game. That's pretty shocking. That's pretty shocking. Jealous of Daniel Murphy's badge, aren't you guys? You should be. 4-time defending chokes, Buffalo Bills. If Garrett Wilson or Williams goes down, it's all in for Devontae. Trade the future. Yeah, I mean, I still think the Devontae midseason trade is in play, and I think that could be accelerated if there's any sort of desperation from an injury or a lack of performance or whatever it is. Good content, get the likes up. JETS, dirtiest linebacker in the game out until December. Talking about Matt Milano. Shakir is good. Shakir is mid. We'll see. I think he has potential. Would you keep Joe Douglas? To be honest, I don't see what he does well other than draft in the 1st round. I love Sauce and Wilson, but 2/3 of the tri-state area would have made those picks. I mean, Breece Hall, 2nd round. Michael Carter, 5th round. Let me pull up the roster here. Just Joe Timmons, 2nd round. Tony, I mean, I think it's more so than late round drafting. I think it's been the under the radar pickups, like undrafted free agents. You had Tony Adams and Bryce Huff, and then off the waiver wire, you had Quincy Williams, John Franklin Myers. He's had some good free agent signings, DJ Reed, Tyler Conklin. I feel like trades too. He's been trading away players for value. He's been solid at Morgan Moses, good trade. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, he's had a lot of whiffs, but ultimately the roster is what it is. He constructed this roster that has them looking like, it's one of the strongest rosters in the league. So whether it was 1st round picks or, however the talent arrived, he got it here and he has them in position to be a Super Bowl contender. But obviously that's just on paper right now. So we'll see if they could actually make that happen. But yeah, and I don't think the successful 1st round pick should be written off because, it's not a lock that you hit every 1st round pick. I mean, we know that from Douglas himself and some of the misses that he's had. But I don't know if Sauce was a guarantee. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau was on the board, and a lot of people liked him. Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave was still there. Jermaine Johnson trading up to get him is looking like a pretty good move. And same thing for Breece Hall. So, I mean, and we'll see what happens with Will McDonald and Olu Fashanu. I think if those picks turn out to be hits, it shows you a lot more than some of those other picks because they weren't as obvious. But yeah, I mean, he has a lot of misses. He has a lot of hits, but somehow he built this great roster. And I think he deserves credit for that if they can capitalize on it. See. You and Blewett are my two favorites. Thank you. Appreciate that. Sorry. This is my first time doing this. Honestly, I did eventually get to it. I'm sorry I didn't get to it quicker, but I'm still getting used to recognizing that and doing all this. I've never done a stream, so apologies for that. But thank you so much for the super chat. And the comment. Who plays Thursday night? Ravens and Chiefs. We don't need Hassan Reddick to be a good team, but we do need him to be a great team. I think that's fair. I mean, I think they can be great without him, but I think it becomes a lot easier to be great if you do have him. Remember that name? Oh, yeah. I think we win for one reason in particular. We need it more. Yeah, the Jets do have a lot more to prove going into this game than the Niners. I do wonder about the Niners, disappointment fatigue, if that's a thing. Losing, they've now lost 2 Super Bowls, 2 NFC championships in the last 5 years with a lot of the same players and the same coach. Like, is there a point where you get tired of that? Like, does your edge kind of drop off a little bit? And I mean, you could have said that last year after they lost another NFC championship and they got back to the Super Bowl. But I don't know. We'll see. It's a great team. Shouldn't be underestimated. Gase is a great coach. He is a great coach. He's an amazing coach. Jets team record of 66 sacks. Let's get 70. How many did they have last year? They had 48. They had 48 sacks last year, 7th most in the league. Baltimore is first. They only had 60, so not even quite to the – I think sacks were easier to get in past eras because teams held the ball longer and they threw it deep more often. Today's NFL, teams get the ball out so quickly because they want those high percentage passes. They want to protect the quarterback. It's getting harder to get sacks. So it might be hard to get to that 66 number or get up to 70. The Eagles had 70 2 years ago, but the Chiefs were second that year and they had 55. So that was a huge outlier. But yeah, I don't know if they can get that many, but and I don't even know if they'll be first in sacks. I still feel like they're more of a pressure and hit team than a sack team. If Hassan Reddick plays, it gives them a much better chance because he's a sack guy. He's a finisher. He turns pressures into sacks. I think your goal is to get like 50 to 55 range. They had 48 last year. Honestly, they could push higher than that if they get more pass attempts against them. 55 is a good goal. That would have been 4th last year. More sacks than leads late. When was the last time the Jets had 2 players taken the first round or top 16 in fantasy? I don't know. I don't know. But definitely not in my lifetime, I wouldn't say. Clemens a lock to start. I don't know about a lock, but I think he's going to. If Reddick doesn't play, I think he will. If Reddick plays, I think you come out with Kinlaw and Quinnen inside, and then JJ and Reddick on the edge. If he doesn't, I think it's probably going to be Jermaine and Clemens starting the game. And he might not even play more snaps than McDonald, but in terms of starting, like who's out there first, who plays in the base defense, like on first down, I think it'll probably be him based on every indication we're getting. So I would say that. who benefits the most from Saleh's high rep count camp approach? Yeah, I was a big fan of this. I wrote an article about it. I like that. He could have easily played it safe with the injury concerns of this team and in recent years, but he decided to push them harder, and they got through pretty clean in terms of injuries. And now the season is coming, and you feel more prepared because of how hard they went in these practices. So who benefits the most? I think you say offensive line. I think that's a good pick there. These are the guys who are, and they still rotated Tyron. He took his off days. I think Moses was doing that as well. But that, especially AVT, I think, get him back into game shape, make sure he's ready to go when the season starts. This is the unit they've had the most injury concerns, and the one they could probably least afford to have them this year. So, I would say that they benefit the most. Bus rider Purdy, 14th best player on the roster. Not worried. Yeah, Purdy's interesting. I don't think he's a bad quarterback, and I think he's better than an average quarterback for sure. I don't think you could put up the numbers that he does while being a total bus driver or beneficiary. But is he as good as 113 passer rating MVP candidate? I don't think so. I was watching some film of the games where he struggled the most last year. And, when you really get pressure on him, and I know he probably still has great pressure stats, whatever, if you look it up, because the system is so good. But when he really got pressured, like against Cleveland last year, Kansas City in the Super Bowl, Baltimore, especially up the middle, the defensive tackle, interior pressure, which Quinnen can bring, then he does have a tendency to misfire on those throws, especially vertically. I feel like his deep touch isn't great. But yeah, he's amazing at what he does, operating within that system, making the throws that need to be made, doing it accurately, putting it in a place where he could maximize yards after the catch. Perfect quarterback for them. But when you apply pressure and you make him have to play hero ball, make plays outside of the structure, I don't think he's that special. And that's why it's so key for the Jets to take advantage of San Francisco's O-line. And it looks like we're up to date on the chat, I think. Yeah, well, we've been on here almost 2 hours. I'm starting to lose my voice a little bit. I don't usually talk for 2 hours straight on these without any breaks, but this has been awesome. I feel like this went pretty well. Like I said, this is my first time doing a solo stream, at least for this long. But I'm excited. 1 week until Jets football, which a season that I think will be the most exciting of my time as a fan, but especially as a JetX writer and just podcaster, tweeter, all that, because all these tweets, like how many tweets do I have on my account? 54,000. All these JetX articles, however many hundreds of those, hours of streaming, podcasting, all of that for a team that hasn't won more than 7 games since I started doing all of that. And yet we still done all of that. So I woke up this morning, a week out, knowing that 7 days from now, it's game day to begin a season of a team actually competing for a championship. What all of this is about, why you analyze every 53-man roster cut, every roster hole, every workout, every OTA tweet. Why do you analyze all that? Because you're trying to put the pieces together to win a Super Bowl, and the Jets have not even come close to being in that conversation since I started doing this, and yet I've still put in all this time. But now they're in the conversation. They're going to be in the mix to do what all of this is about, being the last team standing, lifting that trophy at the end of the year. The Jets are gunning for it this year. And in 7 days, it all begins. So I had to come on here and talk about it for what is about to be exactly 2 hours in a few seconds. This was awesome. Thank you to everyone who commented and tuned in. If I missed your chat or anything, I'm very sorry. I'm like new and raw to this. So apologies to that. But anyone who listened for even 2 seconds, thank you so much. It's Labor Day morning here. All right. So 7 days. I know Rivka's got a stream in a couple days. We should have a Cool Your Jets episode coming later this week. I'll have plenty of articles dropping. I already had one yesterday that I'm really proud of. Check that one out about the Jets D-line against the 49ers O-line. I think Will McDonald in particular has a great matchup. So if you're curious about why I think he's a great matchup, go check that out. It's 11 a.m. That's 2 hours. Let's go Jets. 7 days, everyone. We're in for a ride. Get ready. Strap yourselves in. Don't overreact to this first game. Enjoy it. But understand that this is a long ride, and it's going to be a fun one. So let's go Jets. Thank you for listening. Peace out.